Hello, great to have you back in the course. Let's start working on our next section now, where basically customers can tell about their experience with natures. So you're going to learn here how to make text flow around shapes using the shape outside and float properties together, and how to apply a filter to images. Then you're going to create a background video filling the entire section. And for that, you're going to learn how to use the HTML video element and how and when to use the object fit property. So you see that once more, this section is full packed with new stuff for you to learn. So this is what the section looks like. So here we have like a testimonial of this person, of Mary Smith, and then down here another one. Now what's special about this is that we have this round image here, so this shape, and then this text flows around that shape. And so that's what we're going to do in this lecture. You also see that we have this style here with this non-rectangular design again, so this line that you see here and on this side as well. So that's a design pattern that's repeating across this web page. And then of course you also see that we have this background video here going on. And so you're also going to learn how to do that. Then in the end there's just a small button here, which could then lead to another page where the user could read more stories, okay? So let's start once again with the title, so with the H1 element here. Then we style this entire section, but not the background video, okay? We're going to leave that one to the very end. And then we can also start styling this component here. So this is going to be a story component. So let's do that. Closing the card here. So let's create a new section. Section stories. Then again, we will get our H2 element here, so our secondary heading. So let's grab that from here. This time it says, we make people genuinely happy. All right, and now down here, let's start a new row. Actually, this is all not well formatted. Okay, let's start a new row now. Now this time, we're not going to put any columns in the row. We're just using this nicely centered container that the row gives us so that we can put our story component in there. Okay, and we also make use of the margin bottom that this row here already has. So we cannot just put columns here in the row, we can also use it for other stuff. So let's put a story component here, story element, and for now there's nothing really in there. Let's just leave it like this, okay? So once again, let's start by formatting the section stories here in the home file. So give it some padding first of 15 rem top and bottom, let's say, and 0 left and right, of course. Then for now, we'll also give it a background color, and why not the same gray as before. So this is only temporary because then later on we're going to put that background video, okay? But for now, let's put this color there. Right, and so now we can add our new component in here. So it's a story as CSS. And that's not what I wanted main, okay? And this one is story. And close it. So what do we have in our story? First, the width is not 100% because that would be way too wide. So let's put it to 75%. Then we want to nicely center it. And again, it's a block element inside a block element. And so we can use margin, 0, and auto, right? Then let's also give it a box shadow, 0, then 3 in the Y direction, and a nice blur. Okay, then RGBA for the color as always. And just 0.1 should be enough. Also background color, so that's visible against our background. So color white. And now finally, a nice border radius. So we've been using 3 pixels, So let's do that here again to give it a consistent look. All right, and so here it is. Now we just need to fill it up with something, okay? You can also first give it some padding. 6 rem, let's say. And all right, that should be enough for now. So let's take a look what we have here. So this is once again an H3 element, and this is just a simple paragraph. Then here we have, of course, this image. But in order to create this effect where the text flows around the shape here, let's actually first start with just some round shape and then take care of the image later. So let's put a shape here in this side, and then on this side here a box where we can input the H3 and the paragraph. So then these two things side by side. All right. So we start with the shape, and I will make this one a figure called story shape. And I'm making this a figure because it's semantically the best thing to do, because we will have an image together with a caption. And so we have the image and then a caption. This Mary Smith name here is the caption. And so in HTML5 we have this figure element where we can put an image and then some caption with the fig caption element. But again, let's do that later. For now, let's leave it empty and continue with the part which contains the text. So just a div, story, text. And then in here, as I was saying, we have the heading tertiary again. So H3, heading tertiary. I had the best week ever with my family, is what it says here. All right, and then down there, just some paragraph. So let me just copy the random text that we have here. Or actually, no, let's get the text. It's better. So I think it's this one here. And paste it here. Okay. In here, in the heading, in the H3 element, we also have to add that that margin to the bottom, right? Remember that? And I don't remember quite which class it was. Let me take a look here in the utilities. So I think we used to use this one here. So margin bottom small. So give it a save and take a look. All right. So let's actually now set the font size here for this entire thing to, here we have it. I'll push this one here to the side. So we can do font size. And then there's a variable for that. Let me check out the name. So it's default font size. And so the paragraph will then inherit that. Okay, so let's now take care of the shape. And so this is just a div element for now. Let's give it some height and some width. So 15 rem and height as well. So it's basically a square for now. And then we want this element sitting on the left side. So float and left, in order to make the rest of the content float around it. That's how it works, right? And now just so we can see it, let's give it a background color as well. And orange red, again here my favorite. And let's take a look at that. Okay, and with that in place, let's actually add a bit more text here and then make this content float around as if it was floating around a circle. So a shape like a circle. Okay, we can do that. This doesn't even have to look like a circle. In order to do that, all we have to do is to use the shape outside property. And so let me show you how we can do that. So in here, we can use the shape outside property just like this. So we have to define a vectorized shape here once more. So we did that already when we used the clip path property. So we defined a polygon back then, remember? Well, when we did that back then, I told you that we could use other things here like circles or ellipses. And so now this time, let's use a circle. So, a circle. And in here we can define the size of the circle and the position of the center of the circle. So how does that work? Well, the first number we put here is actually the radius of the circle. And so if we say 50%, then the radius will be half the height and the width of the element. And so in this case, that will be 7.5 rem. And so if the radius is 7.5 rem, then the diameter of the circle will of course be 15. And so that's exactly the size of the shape here, right? And then we say 50%, 50%, because that means that it's the center of the circle. So exactly the center horizontally and vertically. All right. Now I can change this later here in the inspector to show you the difference, but that is what we want here. And in order for this to work, the element must actually be floated. And that's the case here, right? And so we have already done that. And another thing that I should tell you about this is that in Safari, it currently only works with the WebKit prefix. So let's do that. Okay. And so like this, it works in Chrome and Safari currently. So it doesn't even work in Firefox, neither in Internet Explorer and Microsoft Edge. But of course, that's for now, as of recording of this course by the end of 2017. So if you're watching this in the future, this might have changed, okay? So that is that. So the browser support. And another thing that I have to tell you is that besides having to be floated here, this also only works if the element has defined dimensions, so width and height. So this is quite a demanding property. So it has to be floated, it has to have a height and a width. Only then it works. Okay. As I was saying, let's just add some more text here, like repeating that part. Okay, let's take a look. And so you see it's different already here, right? So you see it's like wrapping around a circle. And instead of just imagining a circle, let's actually put one there, okay? And we can do that by using the clip path property. So clip path, and then we just use the exact same circle, all right? Okay, and actually the same thing also with the WebKit prefix, okay? So again, this shape outside, all it does is to define where the content flows around the element. In this case, a circle. And if we actually want the element to look like that circle, we can then use the clip path property, okay? And so that should be better now, should look more logical. And so yeah, actually it's really flowing around that element, right? Let's just take a look here. And as I was telling you, let me actually change these values here a bit. So you see if the circle would be bigger than this, but already stop working. So 50% is really the best that we can do. The same thing, of course, works here. But here we can just decrease the radius, and then of course the shape decreases. All right, let's now add some space here between this. And the best way to move around an element that is floated is to actually not mess with margins or anything like that. We should just use a transform, okay? So let's do that. Transform and then translate it. And of course, in this case, in the X direction, and let's do it -3 rem. And let's take a look at that. And well, that didn't do the trick actually, probably because it should be like this. All right, here we go. Okay, that looks much better. Now the thing is that we had this padding here going on, so these 6 rem, I think, which is the blue color here in this diagram. But with this transform now, we occupied half of that padding there on the left side. So let's add some more padding there. So these 3 rem that we had here, let's add that padding here on the left side. So after that, we say padding left 9 rem. So 6 plus the 3. Okay, and with that taken care of, let's actually now include that image. Okay, so in here. So inside that figure element, let's put the image. And so the image now will be going into the IMG folder and then net 8. So this is what we want. And here let's just say person on a tour, because that's what this image will look like. So now we can get rid of that background color and take a look at what we see here. Well, that looks rather strange, doesn't it? So let's see where that image actually is. So this image is taking all of this entire space, so it's 2000 times 1333 pixels, and that's because we didn't give it a width. So remember, once again, flexible images for responsive web design, they always need a width, always without exception. Okay? So I think we actually didn't give it a class name, did we? Figure, no, we did not. So it's the story image. Just like this. So the story image. And so let's just give it a width of 100%. And why is that? Well, that's because this image is inside of a shape which has this width here well defined. And so if we say width 100%, that will be the 100% of the parent, so 15 rem. And so now it should look good. But well, actually it does not. And that's, of course, it's obvious because the image is wider than its height. And so if we gave it a 100% width, then of course it cannot fill this entire circle that we put here. And so it shouldn't be width 100%, but height. And now then it should look okay. And so that looks much better now. Now, one other thing that we didn't do yet is this non-rectangular design that I have here, okay? So let's take care of that. And we actually do it the exact same way as we did before with the features section. So let's do that. And so what we're going to do is to skew this entire story. So transform and then skew. Now the difference is that this time we're going to do it in the X direction and 12 degrees. So let's take a look at that. And so here we go. Actually, it should be minus 12 because we want it in the other direction. And so that's what it looks like. Now we have the same problem that we had before, which is that now we basically have to skew this one and this one in the opposite direction. So how did we do it last time? Well, we did it like this. So we used the direct child selector and then selected everything. And in this case, that would just be the shape element as well as the, well, where is it actually? Yeah, so here the story text element. Let me actually define it here. I didn't do it yet. Okay, and so that would select the shape and the text. However, this is not going to work, and I'm going to show you why. Let me first put it here and then show you why it doesn't work. Okay, so it does actually work with the text, but not with the story. And that's because we already have one transform here going on. So this translate here is already a transform, and it actually takes precedence over this one. And so therefore only the translation applies and not the skew. Now in CSS there's currently no way of having two transform properties applying at the same time. And that's a shame, but I read that they are working on this. So I think that basically in the future, these functions that we use here, they will be transformed to real properties. So maybe someday we will have skew x as a property and then we can specify 12 degrees. Or we can have translate x as a property and then specify -3 as the declared value. But for now, this is what we have. And so what I'm going to do is to simply add this one here to the text. And then just the skew part here to this transform. And then it's going to work. And so we have to make it separately. So adding the skew now on both here manually. And so like this, it is going to work. All right. So let's take a look at the original. And what is missing here, of course, is this effect that's going on, okay? But I'm leaving that to the next lecture so that we can take a break now, okay? So see you by then. Continuing building the story section that we've been building in the last lecture, we will now implement this hover effect that we have here. So as soon as we hover a story, we have two things going on in that image. So first, take a look and see what the image is doing. So basically the image is zooming out, okay? And then we have the text moving in and also the image getting blurred. So the image moves away and blurs, and the text moves up and fades in. Okay, and so that's a really nice effect, I thought, and so I included it here in the course. So let's start by adding the text actually, which will be our fig caption here. So a special HTML element for captions for figures. So fig caption, and I'm calling it story caption very simply. And so let's just put the name of the person here, and it was Mary Smith. So Mary Smith. All right, now where do we want this caption to be located? Well, we want it to be exactly on top of the image, right? So nicely centered on top of the image. Let's take a look at that again. So here it's exactly in the middle, both vertically and horizontally. So let's do that. And I'm sure you can guess it. We use position absolute. And then you can also guess that we need to set the container to position relative. And the container is in this case the story shape, right? So position relative. And then here it's the same thing as always. So top 50%, left 50%, and then translate minus 50% and minus 50%. And this time I don't have to explain it again to you why this works this way, right? So the color of the text was white with uppercase. Also with a nice font size, let's say 1.7 rem. And of course the text in there, in this box, should also be centered. Okay, so let's take a look at that now. All right, so it's nicely in the center here. Now what we want here to happen actually is when we hover this box here, so this story, is that this here moves up to the position and fades in. So what this means is that before we hover it, it actually needs to be invisible and it needs to be further down to this direction. So down here, so that it can then move up. So we should translate it down, but actually we already have to translate here. So it's minus 50 and minus 50. And so here on the epsilon coordinate, we can actually put 0 again, because then it would be a bit further down, right? You see, so now it's in here. And we could put it even more down if we wanted. We could say like, I don't know, 20%, for example, and then it would move down even further, okay? And then we just set the opacity to 0. And so this is the initial state before we actually do the hover animation. Now, where does this hover actually occur? As we said, it's right here on the story, okay? And so we say story. So as soon as the story is hovered, then we want to change the caption, right? Makes sense? So, and what do we want to change? Well, the opacity to 1, of course. And the transform should translate in Y to minus 50%. Okay, and why is that? Well, it's because the minus 50% is what we had here before, okay? So remember, the initial position was with this here at minus 50, but that's not what we want, but it's what we want after we hover on the story. Now I see a stupid mistake here once again. So it is hover, obviously it's hover. So I just invented a new pseudo class there, okay? So let's see if it works, but not before, of course, animating it as well. So transition, let's say all here, and 0.5 seconds. So let's check it out now. And well, that's not exactly what we wanted, but I think I know what the problem is here, and it is because we didn't have the exact same transform here. So it should be this exact translate. So not translate here, then translate Y here. So instead, we should have this. And so this is where the minus 50% goes. All right. Yep, so that's what we want, right? Oh, and you saw that movement here in the end. So that little shaking, let me show it to you again. So you see at the end, it moved like a little bit, okay? So let's add, once again, back face visibility to this element. So remember, we did this in the header as well, just to fix this small glitch. And so now it should be gone. Yep. I don't know if you saw it before, but it was definitely there. It moved like 1 pixel to the right side or to the left. And so now that is absolutely gone. And so now the second part of this animation is this image, which blurs and moves away. And actually I see that this image here is in a different position. So this lady here is nicely centered, while in here she's not. So let's take care of that. And let me show you why that happens. Okay, so this is where this image is. You see this blue box? That's where the image is. And so I guess we should translate the image itself to be more in the center of the figure, right? So let's do that. So let's translate this image a little bit. And where is it? Here. So transform, translate X, and let's say -4 rem. Okay. And so now we can work on that effect that we just saw. So again, it's when we hover the story, and then what we want to change is actually the image. Okay, and the first thing that happened was that it zoomed out, okay? And well, that looks a bit strange. So somehow, because of this translation that we did here, it cut out this thing. So let's fix that. And what's going to fix that is, once again, backface visibility hidden. Okay, so whenever we're dealing with this kind of like animations and translating stuff, when something weird happens, then many times this backface visibility fixes that. And again, as I explained to you before, I guess no one really knows why it happens this way or why this works this way. But what matters is that it actually does work. So, okay. I found this out myself also the hard way through a lot of experimenting and searching on Stack Overflow and all that stuff. And so now I can teach that to you, okay? So just to make sure again how this works, we zoom out the image when we hover, okay? So what that means is that initially we have to zoom in a bit, so scale it basically, and then when we hover, set the scale to a lower value so that it happens like this. You see? Basically we scaled the image down. So let's do that. So in initial state, we need to add some scale here. Let's say it's at 140%, so 1.4. And then as soon as we hover the image, we want it to be, well, let's actually copy it. Okay, and then we want it at 1 as soon as we hover it. And so that should work now. So let's go to our version. And indeed, all we have to add, of course, is now this transition. So it's the same as this one. So let's just copy it. And here we go. Very nice. So that looks nice already. Now all we have to do is to add that blur. And actually it's not only blur, but it also gets a bit darker, this image, as we hover it. So take a look. It gets a bit darker. Maybe you didn't see it right away, but actually it did get a bit darker. And so let's learn about filters. So there's a very nice CSS property, which is simply called filter. And in there, you have a lot of different filters that you can apply. So let's use blur and use 3 pixels. And again, I'm going to show you different values in the DevTools then in the inspector. And then also, since we want to make it darker, let's say we want brightness. And then a value lower than 100% makes it darker, and the value above 100% makes it brighter, basically, okay? And so that should do the trick. So that's it. It's blurred and it is darker than it was before. So let me now show you some different values. So this is where the hover is applied, right? So we can go to the DevTools, hit this one here and then on hover. And so now we can see it hovered even without actually hovering it with the mouse, okay? And then here we see our CSS styles. So we can blur it even more. So this is what it looks like when it's even really blurred. So we had 3, 6 also looks great, but let's leave it at this. And then in here, so 100 is the original. We put it at 80, but we can make it really dark if we want, or really bright, something like this. Okay. And there are, of course, other filters. So we have blur, brightness, contrast, grayscale, hue, rotate. Let's check that one out. 50%. Or maybe it's in degrees actually, if it's rotate. 50 degrees. So you saw there's a difference there. So lots of filters here going on. You can give it more opacity, saturate it, put a sepia filter, and so you can definitely experiment with those, okay? So all right, this is already completed. Now all we have to do is to add the second box below it, and then also that small button that we have here. So this one, okay? So that shouldn't be all too hard. Let's just head over to the HTML and add another one of these rows. So number 9 this time. This person is called Jack Wilson. And then let's just change his text. Wow, my life is completely different now. All right, and that should work already. Yep. So no surprises here, it works just as before. And now just a small button here, just to make it really complete, okay. So this is pretty similar to the one that we had before in here. So here we had this green button going on. This time we want the other button. So we have the button green and the normal button, and then I think the other one is called button text. Let's see if that works. I'm not really sure. Let's check it out here in the button. So button text. So only one dash there, because it's not a modifier, it's just a different name. So button text. And then read all stories. And then again that right arrow that I showed you in another lecture. So right arrow. Okay. And so that looks pretty good. And if you take a look now and compare it to our original version, all there's left to do now is to add this background video. But that will be a separate lecture. So part 3 of building this sector. So see you then. Let's now finally code up the background video of the stories section. So we have this video here basically spanning this entire section here. So from the beginning of the section all the way until the end. And it also works no matter what the screen width, okay? So on all screen width, the video simply stays here, spanning over the entire section, okay? So let's now do that. And we start, as always, in the HTML. So how are we going to approach this background video? Well, what we're going to do is to add an element to this section, of course, and make it the exact same size as the section, and then put the video in that container, okay? So let's do that. So I'm going to call this background video, so BG for background. And that's a container. And now in here is where we actually will use the video element. So in HTML5, there's a video element which allows us to embed videos on a web page. So video, and I'm going to call it BG, and then content. So we're still following the BEM methodology here. Now this is how videos work. So we will not specify this source tag there, but instead what we're going to do is to specify something called the source in here. So again, instead of using the src attribute here in the video tag like we would do with an image, there's actually a source tag in HTML which allows us to embed a video file into this video element. Okay, so source, and then here we have the source attribute that we had in the images as well. So let's take a look at our images folder, because that's where the video is. And actually there are two formats. So we have one in the MP4 format and one in the WebM format. Okay, so img video MP4. And so I should say that this is a type video and then MP4. And then another one, source src attribute, and now img video and the other one. And then type video of the format WebM. Okay, now I got these videos from a very handy website which is called Cover. So cover with 2 Rs.co. And so here you can download all kinds of different videos for your websites. And they're of course all free to use. And so when you download the video from here, it already comes in these two versions, so the MP4 and WebM. And we need these two formats in order to make absolutely sure that they work across all of the browsers, at least all of the modern browsers. Of course, this is not going to work in a Internet Explorer 8 or 9 or something like that. But again, most of the things that I'm showing you here are not working on those very old browsers that shouldn't be used anymore anyway. And now what we usually also do is to then put some text here, like your browser is not supported. Because what will happen, if none of these can be played by the browser, then this text here will show in the browser instead of the video. And so if the MP4 cannot be played and the WebM cannot be played, like in a very old Internet Explorer, then this text here will appear. Next, what we can also do and what we should do is to add some commands here basically to this video. So we can like specify attributes for the video that we're implementing. So we can say, for example, autoplay. And so now this video will start playing automatically. Now autoplay is usually seen as a bad thing, but in this case, since it's a background video and since we're also putting it muted, okay, so no sound on the video, this is another property that we can specify here. All right, and so since it's muted, it's not really a problem to having it on autoplay. Something else we can do here, like another option, is to say loop, because otherwise it's not going to loop. Okay, so these are the three commands that we should put here. So the three options basically. So let's now take a look at what we got here. And so indeed, here it is. It's not yet the background video, of course, we didn't format that yet, but at least the video, you see, it is implemented by now. And it's bigger than the screen size also, so we should take care of that. And then we should also position it exactly where we want it to be. And let's actually start with that, okay? So, PG video. And what I'm going to do here is to actually create a brand new component. And that's because, once again, we may want to reuse the component on some other place of the website. All right? So this doesn't have to be the only place where we have a background video. And if we can have another one, well, then that should mean that it's basically a component. So PG video here. Forgot the underscore. And okay, so BG video. And I also have to, as always, define it in here. PG video. All right. So PG video. And as I was saying in the beginning, we will position this one using absolute positioning. Position absolute. Top 0, left 0, and then we want the height to be exactly the one of the parent, and the same thing for the width. 100%. Okay, so that is just the container. Now what I have to do then also is to set the parent here, so section stories, to position relative, right? So it's here in home, and let's say position relative. So let's take a look now at how this works. And whoa, great. So it's already actually behind our elements here. So great, right? Well, actually not behind all of them. So you see the button and the H3, they are hidden behind that. Okay, and so we can take care of that by simply setting a very low Z index, and it can even be negative. And so we can be sure that it will be behind all of the other elements, right? Let's take a look again. Oh, and actually it's now like also hidden behind the section as well. And that's because we still have that background color going on there, which we don't want. And so now basically it's transparent, and then it should be visible. And indeed, here we go. Now the next thing that we also want to do is to actually give it some opacity. So we don't want to see the video like this, like with all these colors. It should just be a very subtle effect in the background there. So let's give it some opacity so that we can just see it like really just a little bit, okay? So something like this. And that's already getting pretty close to what we had in the original. Now another thing that we have here going on is that this one is not really opaque like it is here in the example. So you see that here you can actually look through this element. And so let's do that. So we have to change the background color here. We cannot just say opacity 50% or something like we did with the video, because then everything, so including the content, would also get this opacity. And we only really want this background to be like that. So here, let's go back to the story. And so where is it actually? Ah, here. So we use RGBA. And then let's say like 60%. So that looks much nicer, I think. And so now we have to fix this problem that the video is overflowing. So it's taking its entire width, and it's also not really filling this entire section, right? Because the section goes all the way until down here, I believe. Yes, indeed. And so of course we want to fill the entire section, and we also don't want it to be outside of our web page like this, obviously. So there's a very good way to do that. And so let me show it to you. So we need to select now that video itself, content, and let's start by saying that we actually want it to be 100% high and 100% wide, but that alone is not going to fix it. So let me show you why that is. Okay, so now the width is 100% of the section, but it's now covering even less of our section. And that's because this, of course, maintains the aspect ratio of this video. So if it was wider before, then of course it also was higher. So it could occupy more of our section here. So what do we do to actually occupy this entire section here, but also while maintaining the aspect ratio? And there is, of course, once again, quite a new property which allows us to do exactly that with CSS. And it's called object fit. And when we set object fit to cover, then this is actually pretty similar to the background size cover, which we do all the time with the background images, right? So what object fit cover will do is that the element, and so in this case the video, will fill the entire parent while still maintaining its aspect ratio, okay? And the parts of the video that then don't fit the parent element, they will simply be clipped off, okay? So let's take a look now. And here we go. So that's the solution, and that makes it work actually. All right, well, still not 100%, but we're almost there. And again, what did the trick was this object fit cover. So again, this is very similar to having background size set to cover, where it tries to cover the entire element with the image. And so object fit is similar to that, but instead of working with background images, it works with HTML elements, or videos in this case, but of course it would work just the same with images. And so we can have one parent element, then in there an image, and then with object fit, we can make that image cover the parent element. And we could actually use other values here instead of cover. So let me show that to you, okay? So right now we have cover, but we could also have, And let me reload this. But we could also have fill. And what it would do then is to make it fill in all the height and all the width, but not maintaining its aspect ratio. So you see now actually in the video here that the aspect ratio is different. It's not the way it should be. Let me remove that and you will actually immediately see it, right? It doesn't look natural anymore. Okay? So it should be cover. Then it's good again. Okay? And finally, it could also be contain. But I think that's also not really useful because basically that's what we had before. It's trying to fill its parent element, but without clipping anything on the sides. And that's not what we want. So we want cover. Then it's filling the parent element from top to bottom, or from top to bottom here, of course. And then clipping on the side what is too much. Okay? Now it's actually not 100% clipping everything that it should. So it's going a bit outside here. And so we have to fix that. And so, such as we did before, when something overflowed our element, we use overflow hidden. So this is a very handy property, so keep that one in mind. Whenever something like this happens, you can just throw that in there and it will fix the problem, just like this, okay? And so I think that is actually it. So you just implemented a background video in CSS. So that's really cool, right? Maybe you have seen this effect somewhere on some page, but never really knew how it works. And it's actually a bit more simple maybe than you think, right? So it was just a handful of different properties and then pulling the video into the HTML, and that's it. So another section completed. So we're moving on greatly here. All that we have left to do is actually this booking section here. Then this very simple footer. There's navigation here, of course. So that's something that I left for the end because it's rather complex. So there's this great navigation here. And then another thing that's also missing that I showed you in the beginning is that when you hover over these cards and hit the button, then it actually shows this pop-up box here. So this is all pure CSS once more. And so you're going to learn that over the next couple of lectures, okay? But we're making good progress, so keep hanging in there, and I'll see you next time.